I'm Abhishek, and Rajiv, Suruchi and I have put together this film talking about my experiences with bipolar, my challenges, and what did I learn on the way as I dealt with this condition. Our hope is that this film helps you get a sense of what grappling with a mental condition is, what are ways in which you can successfully cope with it, and some strategies that may come up on the way. Mental conditions are one of the most challenging experiences that human beings can face, and I have been fortunate enough to find help, support, and ideas to deal with this. My hope is that through this film, we are able to take some of these ideas and bring them to you. Please share this widely and do write into us about how this film was for you. Thank you.
So every journey of bipolar depression goes through various stages, and the first stage of it is what I call the her stage. The her stage is when something is going off, something is going wrong, but you really don't know what it is. I remember my own her stage when I was out and out an achiever in life, doing well, had written books, founded an organization, doing excellently in academics. And yet I was feeling sad and deeply sad, depressed. I would sleep for hours on end because just staying awake was so depressing. When I would run workshops, I remember slowly walking up to tables and picking up cream biscuits because the sugar would really make me feel a little better for some time. And when one of my friends told me that you may just be depressed, I said, hey, this can't be me, like depression and me, I have no reason to be depressed. Right? And I went on. Left undiagnosed, my condition went into the manic phase later, and that was when I was finally diagnosed. So if in my her stage I would have paid a little more attention to what was going off, I think I would have had a diagnosis much earlier and a very different approach. I would have made lesser blunders, I would have lost much lesser as a result of my condition. And even now, as we run our support group, we get so many people who feel that there's something wrong but are refusing to seek help. And I'd say that if you're in a her stage, or if you know someone who's in that stage, it's extremely important to know what is going on, what really is happening, because the window to seek help starts rapidly shrinking. I remember in my her stage, there was a friend with whom I was in conversation and saying there's something wrong with me and I don't know what it is. Maybe I should get myself admitted, there's something going wrong. But before I could use that window, I was already out and already required to be treated. So I often wonder what a timely diagnosis would have done. I think it would have saved me a lot of friendships. It would definitely have saved a lot of embarrassment, a lot of difficulties. It would definitely have saved some money, some trouble with authorities. And so the her stage is a very, very deadly stage, and if you're anywhere close to that, or someone you know who's very close to that, I'd invite you to go immediately and seek some diagnosis just to find out what really is going on. Maybe way more serious than what you may imagine. So I remember this was somewhere in the rainy season, where one fine day I suddenly woke up and found myself in a strange brown uniform in a hospital. And all around me seemed to be very strange people who were zoned out, people who were behaving very strangely. And it was with this blurred thinking that slowly a realization came up to me that I was in a mental hospital. And that's when suddenly this whole realization of what the hell just happened started coming up. And I think that's what I call the second stage of any mental condition. It's the what the hell stage, where a diagnosis has come in. And there's just this disbelief, there's this whole feeling of saying, oh my god, I can't believe this happened to me. I wasn't the guy, I was the guy who used to make fun of mental hospitals and used to laugh when, scenes of shock therapy would come on films. But this happened to me. So from the this happened to me, it goes into the, oh no, like not me, just this whole fight. Because this is a label, a tag that I'm going to carry for life. And there's a lot of sadness, a lot of self-loathing, self-sympathy. And when I look back at my life, which I had built brick by brick, the whole wall kind of had come crumbling down, and just this whole painful discovery of what I had left behind in my manic phase. I had left behind a lot of difficult relationships, fights, people who had quit their jobs to join my fictitious venture, a lot of relationships that are still not patched to this day, because not everybody knows that this person is facing a condition, is in a mental condition. So the what the hell stage is an extremely difficult stage. It's a stage where you don't want to be that person. You want somebody else to be the person, and you want to be the person who's around and helping and sympathizing. You don't want to be the person to whom this is happening. And the stage can last for a long time. I think this is the stage where your support structure kicks in, and I was fortunate to have a really amazing support structure with my parents and friends who didn't know fully what was happening. None of us knew that there is a mental condition by the name of bipolar and that I have that condition. We all learnt as we went. But that support structure really is required to just hold through that. I remember my days at the rehabilitation where we used to play with pets, and sometimes we used to do things, and when I look back now, I would have probably spent much more time just getting into rehab and just giving myself the time to let the shock settle in, right, and to absorb and to accept my diagnosis. So I think that's what I would say is stage 2, the what the hell stage, which is a really difficult place to be in. So the third stage of any journey, as I see it, is the stage which I call oh well, and I say that with a sigh, because that has been about just accepting and the long, slow journey of rebuilding life. For me, this journey started after a couple of months of the what the hell phase. I realized that there's no escaping this condition. It is here. And I think the most important thing in that time for me was just this decision to be patient with myself. I had created a beautiful life for myself that had all come crashing down, and I was suddenly stuck with something that I didn't want at all, but was refusing to go. I was on medication, my thinking was blurred. Everything that I was so proud about was no longer relevant, because I was feeling like shitty, very sad. And I think from there this whole oh well phase began. I think it began with me saying that, well, this is it. I mean, I don't think I have too much of a choice here, and so I'm going to patiently, brick by brick, not even rebuild my life. I don't think at that time I even thought about rebuilding life. I just said, I'm going to be patient with myself. I'm not going to give in to either self-sympathy. I'm not going to give in to wallowing. I'm not going to give in to excuses. I'm just going to wait it out, and I'm just going to wait it out slowly. So the oh well stage for me is extremely important in terms of just being patient with yourself. I think just conditions when they are on are so difficult that they feel like they last forever. I think I've been in lows which were really bad, sufficient to drive me to suicide, not wanting to live because there's so much pain, right? And when they go on, they just seem like endless. And the oh well phase is just about saying that, someday this will pass, right? Because it has to. Things change in nature, and someday you will find a way to cope. Someday you will come to terms with it. Someday you will find equilibrium. Until that happens, you have no choice but to walk, to keep doing your work, whether it's meditation, journaling, therapy, medication. But it's just this long, slow walk on a sunny day in the desert, on the road all alone. And it's that kind of a tedious, monotonous journey. So that's what the oh well phase really is. It's a phase of just patience. In my oh well phase, I was this 90 kg fat man who was on so much medication that the medication caused constipation, and I had to have medication for that medication and to fight the side effects. Thinking was just groggy, and I think my doctor at that time also believed in a very strong line of treatment. So just fight it with all out, maximum medication to avoid going too high, too low, medication to stay in the zone. So lots of pills, and I remember not being able to manage my sleep, because I would sleep and wake up at 7, and then instead of the day rising, it would start getting darker, and I'd realize that it's 7 in the evening and that I've slept through the whole day because of my medication and missed everything that day. So if you really think about it, each of these phases are bad in their own way, difficult in their own way. And the OL phase is just all about everything bad, not looking good, not being able to think well, feeling like a complete loser in many ways, and yet saying that I'm just gonna go on, and this will pass someday. I will rock someday. I will shine. There is light on the other side. The fourth phase of any condition, as I see it, is a phase called bring it on. And this is a phase where there's a certain peace that I have made with my condition. I've learned how to cope with it. I've learned all about it, not only from an allopathic perspective, but from an Ayurvedic and a shamanic perspective and a natural healing perspective. So I'm on top of things that way. Medication has stabilized. And I really now find myself in the zone of saying that, hey, you know what? This condition may not even be an illness. If managed well, this could actually be a gift. And with bipolar, I look back at the legacy of people who have had this condition, right from Van Gogh to Stephen Fry to some of the most interesting people on our planet have experienced some of these states and have been able to use it in very creative ways. Many of them killed themselves, but even before they did that, they were able to do something really amazing with their lives. So the bring it on phase is essentially saying that, just bring it on, bring on life. And I'm going to engage with it from my space of power. And I may not be like anybody else, but I am different, and there's a value to that difference. Has life become easier? No. Do I still need medication? Yes. Do I still go low or high unexpectedly? Yes. But what has changed is I've learned to cope and create conditions around me that help me survive. So even though I cannot consistently show up for work, I've been able to build relationships and agreements with my colleagues that allow me to have that variance. Even though there are challenges in coping with my lows, I have found a way to drop a mail to everybody and tell them that this is the phase and this is what you can expect from me. So life in one way doesn't change, but in the bring it on phase, you're now ready, having integrated this condition into your being, to engage with life on your own terms once again. Being in what I consider my bring it on phase, I can tell you that there is light at the end of a tunnel. When you study your condition, learn to cope with it, and also build an ecosystem around you that lets you live with it, you will be in a state where life will really open up and create spaces for you to have those gifts that you have, your states give you, bring them to life and bring them forth. I think, and therefore this is the phase worth the journey through all these previous phases to come here. It's kind of in some ways the promised land, and it may not last forever, but while it is there for me right now, I'm recording this video, and similarly once you are there, you can also make the most of it.
When you start living with the person and experiencing the vagaries and the moods and just behaviors which seem inexplicable to someone who does not have a mental condition. I mean, all of us have mental conditions, I think, but some maybe just experience them more acutely, which Abhishek does. That's when it starts to sink in, and you start realizing things, but then you kind of forget about it. You forget the learnings you had from that experience, so that for years and years and years, every time something happens, it's almost like it's fresh. Stereotypical responses to a mental illness, like, we should try and get you off medication, like medication is bad, or come on, we'll snap you out of it, let's do something positive, let's work, let's exercise, let's do all these kinds of things, So I think that was what it was, and I was very, very keen that Abhishek get off his medication, at the beginning, and I think we did actually reduce the medication a lot.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that when one begins to cope with a mental condition, people around naturally forget that there is a mental condition because it's not visible, right? And it's very hard for people to remember that the person they're dealing with is experiencing something that is unusual, and therefore it's a very tricky bit of reminding. I mean, you can't wear a board saying, "Hi, I'm Abhishek, I'm bipolar," and all of that. If anything, the fact that people treat me normal shows that I'm coping with it well. It also ensures that they forget in their heads that there is something off. I think that happens many times.
And are we really equipped to deal with people who have mental conditions? We're not, you know. We just think we'll wing it. Like actually most human beings think we can wing just most experiences in life. Whether it's parenting, whether it's dealing with violence, whether it's dealing with a fight that you have with a couple. We just grab onto things we've read from literature, from movies, just pass down wisdom, and somehow we think, you know, there's no training for this, there's no learning. And then the only thing you can do is actually just really start reading up. You know, we have technology now, we have computers. You can sign on to so many forums where people, spouses, partners, parents talk about this, and you need to plug into those systems to help a person with bipolar.
You know, one, people don't even understand what a mental condition is, and often live in denial, saying, oh no, it's okay, everything will be fine. They don't want to talk about it, firstly. Second, because of its invisible nature, I think that makes it really tough.
Yeah.
If I have a fracture in my hand, everybody's going to sign my plaster and say like, oh, get well soon. But if I have something that is not visible, most people can't even make sense of what that is. Then there's a huge stigma, right? So people don't want to talk about it because they think, okay, I mean, it's bad. We tease each other as saying, oh, mental, ye to mental hai, ye to mental banda hai, thane jayega, alibag jayega, and so on, whatever. And so all this really adds up. And if you ask me, do people around me know how to cope? I would say no. But then I also own it up, right? So it's up to me also to communicate what I expect. First is for me to know what do I want from people around me when I'm in a low or in a manic phase. And then the second is to communicate to them actively, saying, okay, this is what I'd like you to do to me, you know, and it's not difficult, right? It's just like when somebody else is ill, when anybody in your family is down with an illness, if somebody is down with a dengue or a case of anything that is a semi-serious illness, what would you do? You'd check on them, you'd make sure they're okay, provide them support if needed, and make sure you're just checking in on them through that course of illness, right? Just let them know that you're there is that solidarity. So it's not a major expectation really. It's really to treat it like any other condition, any other illness.
So another thing I realized after years of a lot of painful experiences with your partner, because you're just not up to the mark, you know, you don't know what to do, you're floundering. Maybe there are times you don't want to deal with it, you know, you just don't know why do you have to go through this because your partner is going through this, which I'm sure happens in a lot of illnesses. Is that you are not to blame for it, you know. There are many times when the person with the condition wants to pull you down with him or her, you know. They want to blame you for it because they're just angry, they're sad, they're upset, and they want you to be in that upset with them. And at the beginning you want to, because you want to be there for them, and then you're sitting there with them, or they want you around all the time, or sometimes even they want you to be sad. And you have to really learn not to get caught up in that whirlwind and, you know, be pulled in by it. You have to be really strong and say that, you know, this has nothing to do with me. I can be around as much as this person needs, but that condition in the low or in the angry phase doesn't have anything to do with me. It's a chemical reaction that's going on in this person, and it doesn't mean anything because, you know, just the next day this person could wake up completely happy, and then you're just like, what's going on here, you know, because you thought there was a deeper meaning, a reason. You sit and you try to figure out why this person became sad or angry. Was it something you said? Was it something you did? And it wasn't. But it's hard, it's really hard, you know, and especially if you're upset yourself and then, you know, it spirals into a fight, and you shouldn't be shouting at a person with a mental condition, but it ends up happening. So just to maintain that center and just to be strong.
There's almost like jealousy towards everybody else who's not experiencing the same level of sadness and pain. It's almost like, why am I chosen for this deep grief? And here around me, for everybody else, life seems to be so normal. And I think with my partner then, there's always this desire saying that I'm visiting this depression land all alone, why don't you come with me, right? And but then after many such trips to depression land, I think I have reached a space of just accepting that it is at one level a very solo journey, right? There are people around and there are people to hold hands, but all said and done, it's just something that I experience. I can come back, I can report back my stories about what it felt like,
but at the end of the day it is between me and myself.
With Abhishek, we did really reduce the medication, but that's because he supported it with a lot of behaviors such as meditation, journaling, and lots and lots and lots of dialoguing with me, lots of conversations, lots of love, just being together with him, in that support structure. And also I think what helped was that he generally works, he works in a line which he loves, so he's doing a profession which he loves, which is not got too much pressure on it, and he's very fierce about his time, about doing things that he wants to do. It could be just taking walks, getting wet in the rain, going for really long coffee dates very regularly, going for drives, taking mini vacations. So he structured his life around that. So I think maybe that really helped him reduce his medication to such a point where some doctors may even feel that it's not even a dose, But what I want to say is that even though I felt that we should reduce medication, it may not work for everyone. Some people. I mean, Abhishek has not stopped his medication, right? He still is on a dose. He takes Lamitor, OD50, half of that daily. But I think he wants to try getting off of it. It's a very scary experience for him. He doesn't know what will happen if he gets off of it. However, you really have to think about whether you can get off the medication or not, depending on which phase or stage of bipolar you're at.
I think my realization has been that it's totally between me and myself, to the extent of feeling a low also. So I think around me there is lots of advice of all types. I come from the alternative space, so there are people doing Ayurveda, naturopathy, homeopathy, and I think all these are very valid choices available. But at the end of it, I am at the receiving end of my choices. So I have to own my choices fully. Now I may get excited one day and say, oh, off medication, or someday try something. But end of the day, the consequences are almost totally mine to take. And so I remind myself that very regularly. And really, I own my decisions. I think that's what I'm really trying to come at, that the partner like Suruchi has a huge say in my treatment. But finally, I try and make sure that I factor all that I know in, and then take a decision that I can stand behind, because that's what ultimately ends up happening.
One has to maintain this very strong core, this island of calm and peace inside oneself, so that one isn't affected, by the ups and downs that the person with bipolar is going through. And also set the boundaries, that this is not okay. This is how much I can contribute, give, share, but then I can't do any more than that. I cannot be sad with you. I cannot be wildly happy with you. I cannot be as talkative as you. I can't go on mad trips with you. And it doesn't mean that I don't love you, that I'm not your friend, that I'm not your parent, or whatever it is. These are my boundaries, There's no firm ground that he's standing on. We have this whole concept of terra firma, which is literally the earth, but there's a terra firma inside for most of us. We're pretty stable, we have our kind of our highs and our lows. There are days we wake up depressed, there are days we wake up insanely happy. But for a bipolar person, I feel that terra firma is like a seesaw or like a surfboard, and they're like that all the time. And that surfboard could go anywhere. One day it could be on top of a volcano, that surfboard, and they're just like these flames just bursting out from underneath them. On another day it could be a rapidly moving river. Not even another day, maybe in half a day it changes, maybe another time it could be a calm ocean. You can't tell, and they have no control over what's coming, or what the next topography is going to be. They have no idea, and that's what their internal state is like. It's taken me years to understand this, and then understanding it is one thing, but then how does one deal with it as someone who's not going through it? Honestly, it was only after about 6 years, I would say, that I realized this is what it means to live with a person with a mental condition. That I have to be ready for anything. A lot of behaviors which we find inappropriate, which the person with the mental condition knows is inappropriate, but just he or she does them anyway, you know, and they may not feel remorse for it. They may not connect things, they may not connect experiences, or like, yeah, I did this, but why should it affect you? And not to, for me, the learning was not to take it personally, you know. It just sank in that this is what it means to live with a person with a mental condition. I know I'm just repeating myself, but it was such a strange realization, you know, that this is kind of the very disconnected way that Abhishek thinks and lives. And for me, I connect the dots, which I feel a lot of us do, but for him those dots are not connected, you know. Just dialoguing, a lot and lot and lot of just talking about it, you know. Just sitting down with the person and saying, what are your expectations from me as your partner, as your parent, or whatever it is, you know. And of course, if the person is too young, then you have to initiate those conversations, or the person with the mental condition has to initiate those conversations, that this is what I would like you to do. And we forget, or we don't want to deal with it, you know. So then that person has to write them down and send emails to her parents, or her lover, or whoever she wants to, her friends, that, you know, this is what I expect from you because I have a mental condition. I need to know what the condition is. I have to do my homework. You know, I need to read up. There's such amazing literature on the net. There are forums, support groups. Encourage the person with the condition to join a support group, no matter how low they are, to take them there, you know, just to support them. And also to know your own limits. You know, you're not a doctor, and you're not an angel, you're not God, neither are you the devil. So to not let what's happening to the person with the condition affect you so much, and just to know your limits, you know. Don't be too distant, but don't over intrude either, you know. Don't just be constantly there with them, but just be around. Let the person know that you're around, and also keep telling yourself, and maybe sometimes tell the person also, that this is going to pass. Take notes maybe, that what worked, what didn't work, maybe what are some triggers. Some people say like the cycles of the moon affect them, maybe certain kinds of conditions, loud music, something, whatever it is, you know. Maybe take notes with the person, always keep the person involved. And, you know, whatever makes the person happy, you know, like if tea makes the person happy, chocolate makes the person happy, music, whatever it is, just try and do that, and just be fully aware and present for the person, you know. Lots and lots and lots of love which you can give that person. And another very surreal and almost unreal concept that we have to live with is that the person with bipolar can commit suicide at any time. With Abhishek, he would make his thoughts clear to me. I'm sure he doesn't talk about it as often as he feels about committing suicide, you know. But he does bring it up enough that ताकि वो मेरे जहन में रहता है, ताकि मुझे वो याद रहता है कि, you know, he could commit suicide at any time. Thoughts of death are very natural to him. They're very real. They're very frequent. You know, and in the beginning you're like, yeah, man, we all think like, you know, we want to die and all that, you know. We talk about that, but for a person with mental condition, it's very, very real. So, as a co-traveler with this person, that is something you need to be aware about. Of course, how it colors your behavior is something you need to figure out, right? Then do you like all the time make concessions for the person? Are you always like treading on tiptoes around that person? You know, is that even what the person wants? That they're treated with kid gloves because, you know, they could commit suicide at any time? Those are real questions we're grappling with, you know, all the time.
Yeah, I think on the aspect of suicide, I've traveled, I would say, a long way, but there have been huge periods of time where I've been so sad that dying has been a better option than really experiencing that kind of deep grief I felt jealous of people who committed suicide, saying that they were able to escape the agony. And suicidal ideation also means constantly making a list of ways to kill oneself, which would be the least painful, which are the most likely, which are the most practical, and so on. Then the very thin line between those ideas and those ideas gaining more and more energy, I think, and yet to not use it as a bargaining chip. I think it can come across very easily as saying that, oh, flashing a suicide card so that I can get my way, but that really was not the point. I think I was just trying to share what was happening. But recently I've been able to reach a stage where I think I've overcome that thought fully, or almost fully, more than anything else as a virtue of a decision, where I said that, okay, now I think I'm not going to indulge that thought too much in spite of my pain, and I'm going to park it. So not that I don't feel suicidal. I think I do have bursts of suicidal ideation, bursts of paranoia also. But I think more than anything else, it's a decision to engage with life fully, to show up for life as long as and as much as I can, and to deal with the pain in better ways. But even now, if you really ask me, this is more as a decision as it could be any other decision. There is no, how do I say, there's no positive value to it, to saying, oh yay, this is better than this, being alive is better than being dead, kind of a thing, because the experience of grief that happens in low phases is fairly deep, I would say, and sufficiently deep to really reconsider this whole experience of living itself. I think one practice that really has worked for me is close to what is taught in Vipassana, which is really to observe my state and sensations. So the feeling deep grief, but not giving into that grief, but really being able to observe that sense of grief, and seeing that, to not give into it or react to it, but just to see it brew and go deep within. I think that is a part of my practice, and it's an ongoing practice. It's very slow progress, perhaps, if there is anything, but to me, that being able to not give in to the pain, to not react or respond to the pain, or even will to end it as soon as possible, I think, and just allow that grief the home that it is seeking for some time, knowing that it will pass. I think that is key, especially if you intend to survive and not do harm to yourself. I would say that bipolar typically begins with an experience, right? So when I say there is something that is bipolar, there is clearly an experience that has happened with me. This is an experience of feeling a certain state, a certain mood that is high or low. And this experience is tallied with something called DSM, right? That's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, DSM, with the 5th version of it is currently in operation, in use. And so the experience leads to some behaviors, and the doctor comes in and looks at those behaviors and matches them with DSM. So in DSM it is, there are criteria 1, 2, 3. If these match the behaviors, the doctor says, okay, this looks like bipolar, so we declare that you are bipolar, right? So that's one place where bipolar exists. It exists in the DSM, it exists in your experience. The third place where it exists is in the language you use, right? So by language, I mean whatever you use to communicate to others about bipolar, right? I may be feeling really happy inside, but if I tell you that I'm feeling horrible, I'm feeling terribly sad, then for you, I have used language to create bipolar. I have said, I am sad, or I am happy, right? Or I have bipolar disorder. Again, for bipolar, you can use words like disorder, you can use bipolar complex. There are people who use bipolar advantage, right? I have a bipolar advantage. So whatever is the language you use to report bipolar is also where it exists. People take your word for it. But I think most importantly, bipolar exists in the stand that you take, the stand that I have, or some people use I am bipolar, right? This is a stand that you take to the world. This is what you hold yourself out to be for the world. And I think what is important to note is that your power does not lie here. You do not have a say over DSM. It's already been decided for you. This is a book
made mostly in the US and followed by the whole world to kind of diagnose mental conditions. You have no control over experience, but you can observe your experience and not react to it. So there is still some degree of leeway over it. You definitely have much more control over language, where you can be very accurate in talking about what you're experiencing, and you build the trust of people around you that you're not bluffing away your state, but you really are sharing what you feel. You're not pulling off a con job. But I think the most power you have is right here, right? Where you say this stand as bipolar and what that means, right? You have a choice of deciding what that means. So in my case, for example, the stand I have taken is that even though I may have a diagnosis of bipolar, I'm not going to let it affect how I show up for life, right? So I'm saying that I may have ups and downs in my experiences, and whatever the DSM says, I am going to show up for life irrespective of what I'm feeling at the moment. So it's literally like not giving yourself too much sympathy, too much leeway, and learning to create the space between your experiences and your stand. So irrespective of what I experience, experiences can fluctuate, but the stand need not fluctuate, right? The stand that I will show up for life in spite of my bipolar. This is the only place where I have any degree of control over this condition. I can't control the DSM. I can't control the experience. I can describe this authentically, but I can't lie about it. So these are out of my control. But the stand that I will show up for life irrespective of my condition. This is where I exercise my control over bipolar. This is where bipolar hides. This is where you catch it, and this is where you deal with it.
Being in a low is a shitty experience. It's an experience of total darkness, where you want to shut everything down, not really interact with anybody. It's like a deep black hole. One thing that I've found which helps during my lows is to give them time. When I experience low, I shut everything down and give myself a couple of days just to be with this low, with this sadness. Because instead of beating the sadness out of ourselves and trying to snap into happiness, perhaps a more enlightened way is to allow the low to do its work, to allow it to do what it's here to do, to deepen our feeling, to deepen our experience of pain, to hope that these holes can hold the same happiness later. Not fight away the low, not try to snap out of it, but to give it all the time that it needs. And by very nature, I've found that sooner or later those lows pass away. If you give them time, they hang around for a bit. But eventually, with medication, with patience, with just self-talk, and giving yourself deep rest, I think depression is deep restion, they sooner or later go away and life feels great once again.
Any state that I see in myself, I see it having three components. The M stands for mood. Mood is what I'm feeling at the moment. What is my emotional state, right? Am I feeling low? Am I feeling flat? Or am I feeling high? So that's the mood. O is the outlook. Outlook is what's my outlook on life. Is my outlook on life positive? That is, I'm going to be a rock star, life is going to rock. Or is my outlook on life depressed? Like I'm going to be a loser, a failure, life is hopeless, existential, everything is meaningless. So that's outlook. And the third is E, which is for energy. And your energy can also be very high or very low or flat. So in a manic phase, of course, it's very easy to figure out because everything is up, right? So my mood is high, I'm feeling very happy. My outlook on life is very bullish. I'm saying life is going to be amazing. I'm going to be the rock star. I should think about whether I want to be the Prime Minister or do I want to be the UN Secretary General. And the energy is really high. So there is this hard to go to sleep and so on. So that's not tough to figure out. That's a manic phase. Similarly, a depressive phase is not tough to figure out either because my moods are really sad. I'm gloomy. So that's my state. My outlook is also very depressing. So I don't think life's going to add up. And my energy is low, so I don't even have the energy to move out of my bed or even tell someone that I'm not feeling low. What is interesting though is the in-between states, right? Because there are these haywire states where you wonder what is happening with me, because I'm feeling sad, but I'm feeling a lot of energy, right? And I think something will happen in my life, but my mood is sad. or the other time when my mood is sad, my energy is low, but my outlook on life is still very positive, right? So there's this whole, it's like there are these three buttons going on in my head, and some can be on and off, and having a more framework in my head lets me very clearly say that, okay, my moods are here, this is what's happening to my outlook, this is what's happening to my energy, right? And that lets me calibrate my state better. So I think if you really want to try this out for yourself, just look at one, where is your mood right now? Is it high? Is it low? Is it flat? Second is, what's your outlook in life? Is everything seeming like alive, beautiful, adding up to something very beautiful and mysterious? Or is everything completely meaningless, and so pointless, right? And the third is, look at your physical energy. So right now as I speak, I know my energy is somewhere mildly high, right? Not absolutely high, I'm not buzzing away, but I know that it's a slightly higher than flat kind of an energy. But where is my energy? And the three together, I think, is what really my state at any point of time is.
बाइपोलर या डिप्रेशन जैसी स्थिति के लिए अक्सर आपको थेरेपिस्ट ढूंढने पड़ेंगे। हो सकता है कि आपका पहला थेरेपिस्ट इस रॉटन एप्पल की तरह बड़ा ही फालतू और बेकार हो, लेकिन इससे आपको हार नहीं माननी चाहिए, क्योंकि दुनिया में बहुत सारे थेरेपिस्ट, बहुत सारे मेडिकेशन और बहुत सारे डॉक्टर्स हैं। जी हाँ दोस्तों, अगर आप एक के बाद एक कोशिश करते रहे तो फाइनली आपको मिलेगा आपका आइडियल थेरेपिस्ट, आपकी आइडियल मेडिकेशन और आपका आइडियल डॉक्टर। जी हाँ दोस्तों, ट्रायल एंड एरर के बाद आप मेहनत करके एक ऐसे थेरेपिस्ट, एक ऐसे डॉक्टर, एक ऐसे मेडिकेशन को पा सकते हैं जिसके साथ आपका बाइपोलर हो सकता है बहुत ही अच्छी तरह मैनेज। तो दोस्तों, अपने पहले थेरेपिस्ट, डॉक्टर या मेडिकेशन पे न रुके, कोशिश करते रहे और अंत में आपको मिलेगा आपका परफेक्ट थेरेपिस्ट, आपका परफेक्ट डॉक्टर, आपका परफेक्ट मेडिकेशन। When you're diagnosed with your condition, you're going to go to a therapist, a doctor, try out some medication. And the first thing that you try out may terribly fail. In fact, it may not work at all. And you may find yourself completely hopeless and giving up and saying that this is completely useless. But don't stop there, because it's mostly an impossibility to find somebody who's matching your ideology, a therapist that works, a doctor that is perfect, medication that doesn't leave you true drowsy on the first attempt. Instead, keep trying. And as you keep trying, more or less you will find out the right mix of the therapist, the doctor and the medication that really work for you. Very often when we finally push people to do something about their conditions, they meet their first therapist and they find that it's terrible. They find medication that completely leaves them drowsy, or they may find a doctor that just over-medicates or doesn't medicate at all. But that need not be the end. You can choose to not stop at the first one, and very often the first one will not be what works for you. Instead, you keep on looking, and you look a little more and a little more. You experiment with different therapists, different doctors, different drugs, till you reach your right combination. And there'll be a time when you will find just that right combination, the right combination of therapy, medication and a doctor that who really works for you. When that happens, you'll reach this place where your condition will become very manageable. And it seems like a long journey, but trust me, it's really, really worth it. If you've been diagnosed with a condition, don't feel sad, don't feel apologetic about it, don't hide it. You don't hide it when you have a cold, a cough or an upset stomach. So why hide it if you have a mental condition? Just come out in the open with it. In fact, I invite you to wear your condition on your sleeve and let people know that this is what you are experiencing. This will let them know what to expect from you. It'll let them place you and treat you specially when they need to. It'll let you know, like a humble reminder, that these are your limitations, this is what you are grappling with. Your struggle is not any different from the struggle of a woman trying to fight for liberation. It's not any different from the struggle of a gay or a lesbian person. We're in a minority, we have not even come out in the open or organized ourselves. The first step to doing that is to having the guts to step out and acknowledge that this is something that I am facing. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm going to seek help and I'm going to make my life work. So in case you're feeling ashamed or shy, now is the time to step out with your condition. While managing your condition, I can't stress enough the importance of having personal practices. I spend my time journaling, meditating on a daily basis, and this is the time which is with myself. It is time that I spend sensing what is going on with me. I spend this time trying to find out what are the boundaries, how much am I going to push myself, how much am I going to accept my condition. And whatever the personal practice really is, it's important that it be a regular personal practice. Any personal practice is okay. Whether it's listening to songs on loop, whether it's dancing, whether it's going to your favorite place in nature, whether it's just spending time staring at a candle or a blank wall. It does not matter. What matters is that you have a regular practice that you honor. And if you build that, it'll start creating a strong foundation for you, which over the years will add up in your ability to managing your condition. For me, if I can manage my condition to whatever extent I can, I surely have my meditation, my journaling, and my songs on loop to thank. There is one golden rule that I can give you. It is know thy condition. Everybody in the world is going to have an opinion on what you're experiencing. There are some people who might tell you, oh, you're PMSing, or it's just like midlife crisis. There may be others who may say that, oh, it's just a phase, it'll pass, snap out of it. But what is going on with you? If you don't know what's going on with you, you'll take somebody else's word for it. And the best way to avoid it is for you to know what the hell is going on with you. With my diagnosis of bipolar, I've really gone not only in studying bipolar from a DSM angle, how do the nerds define it, but also from the perspective of how a shamanic healer would look at it. They look at it as a spiritual experience of sorts. I've looked at what Ayurveda talks about different states. I've looked at what alternative medicines are. So to become an expert in your condition, so that when somebody tells you, I think you have this diagnosis, you speak back and you say, yes, I do, and this is what it means, and this is where I stand on that, right? So remember, know thy condition, because before you can do anything about it, it's knowledge that comes first. Being bipolar is a crazy experience. Sometimes I feel like the king of the world. Sometimes totally down in the dumps. In the highs, life is dancing with me. Anything is possible. Every moment is ecstasy. If I could slice my life and gift you a bite, you'd see how delicious it tastes. Ah, my highs, how I love my highs. They tell me anything is possible. They send me cruising on a flight that's soaring in the sky, till it comes crashing down into a low. A low, oh my God, a low. How I'm petrified of my low. How I hate how sad it makes me feel. How I hate them that I'd not wish them even on my enemies. How dark is that place of suffering, where the sadness of everyone is visiting. It has taken refuge in me. It's carving out deep cracks, and in each of those, filling them up with dense liquid black holes. As I silently weep in the darkness, minutes and hours seem like eternity. And suddenly clouds clear up without warning, and life seems sunny once again. High and low, and high and low again. That's life as a bipolar person. With no ground to stand, it's hard to explain or understand. But now that I have this deal in life, this hands of cards in this round, I promise to play the best I can and have a total blast while it lasts. I visit the land that pull me and bring back some treasures. It's a roller coaster ride, which I manage just by telling myself that perhaps the world is nothing but just an amusement park.